difference, one cup at a time. Yeah, this is tea time. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time.
Well, welcome to Evening Tea Time. That's right, Miss Liz is back. And this afternoon we had the incredible Mark Smith, a wrestler that shared his story and his book. But now I have the incredible W.L. Hawkins back, and she's a returning guest from season 3. So we're going to have some updates. We're going to have some new books. We're going to have a good, different kind of tea tonight. And we're going to bring back some good memories that we had the first time we sat together, and now what we're doing tonight. So if you haven't subscribed to the Miss Liz's YouTube channel, run on over there, click on the YouTube channel, give it a quick subscribe, ring that little doorbell, and you'll be notified every time we're live. If you have a tea time that you resonate with, share those tea times out, because you do make the difference when you share these tea times out, because we're making a difference all together. So a little bit about Wendy is going to come up, and then we're going to do some disclaimers. We're going to do all that good stuff. Grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab a hot chocolate, get in your PJs, and let's just have a good old tea time tonight. You do not have to drink tea to enjoy tea time with Miss Liz. So the disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment and taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussion for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It's significant to know that the show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection, and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later date and time. Again, all tea times are done on Thursday, 3 and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every week. And if it's a Monday or Tuesday, it's a surprise tea time or a returning rescheduled tea time as well. So now let me give you a little bit on Wendy, and then I'm going to get Wendy in here, and we're going to spill some tea with you. So W.L. Hawkins writes edgy urban fantasy with a twist of murder. From her loft near Vancouver, BC, her novels to charm a killer, to sleep with stones, to render a raven, and to kill a king, each stand alone, but form the Hollystone Mystery Series. This cover of West Coast witches and their eccentric friends solves murders using ritual magic and a little help from the gods. Although she is an introvert, in each book, her characters go on a journey where Hawkins travels herself. She researched all her locals, Ireland, Scotland, and the BC coast, to soak up the scenery landscape. In 2017, she climbed Croghan Hill in Ireland to survey the land her king would rule in, to kill a king. A romantic time travel thriller set in Iron Age Ireland. To know more about Wendy, go and check Miss Liz's Facebook page. Her full bio is there. And we do have some other books that I just found out that are out. So let's get those out there tonight. So let me get Wendy in here. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, how are you, Liz?
I don't know, man. My tongue twists right at the beginning of every show, and I swear it's just breaking the ice, right?
Yeah. And there's plenty of ice around these days up here in the
right?
north where we live, right?
It's like freezing cold out.
So cold.
So Wendy, for the listeners and viewers who haven't heard your story and about your books and who you are as an individual, if you'd like to share a little bit on who you were as a little girl and who you are now.
who I am as a little girl. And oh, that's interesting. I have not been asked that question before. I actually don't think I've changed a whole lot since I was a little girl. I'm still an introvert. I still love animals and trees and nature and fairies and fantasy and all of that sort of stuff. Magic, that's a big thing for me too. Who am I now? I love writing. I've written quite a few books now, and I just keep getting inspired and writing more. So the latest book that just came out this week is actually about my writing process, which is probably something we will get to during the show.
Absolutely. And I was blown away when I seen that new book. I was just like, oh, is that a journal? Is that a writing? Like, is it worked through the process? Is it self-help? Like, I was blown away. And you have some amazing reviews on that new book. So if anybody wanted to check that out, they could check that out on your website and on your Facebook page as well. There's some amazing reviews on there. But there's a 5th book that's with the Hollystone Mysteries.
Hollystone.
Why do I say? Oh my goodness, Hollystone.
Yeah.
Mysteries, Wendy. So, can you tell us a little bit about that book? Because I just found out about that book too.
I can, and it's a little bit of a sequential thing for me to kind of go through, but I'll try and do it for you. So, there are 5 books now that are Hollystone books, and they all follow Estrada, who is a bisexual, free-spirited Gothic magician who works as a magician in a Vancouver nightclub, but he also is the high priest of Hollystone Coven. So he's into Wicca as well. And the first 2 are murder mysteries that feature him. The 3rd one turned into a thriller when a vampire stole his baby.
Okay, that's right. I remember that.
Right, to render a raven. So a little hint there: the ravens are actually vampires. And so To Render a Raven, the whole coven gets in a yacht and sails up the Pacific coast to get his baby back from this very nasty vampire. And some really tragic things happen, not with the baby. I'm going to say right off the top, I don't want anybody thinking I write anything like that. I have no animals or children get hurt in my books. That's, in fact, the baby
disclaimer is put out there.
Yes, yeah. The baby has a pretty great time, actually. And anyways, at the end of To Render a Raven, there are some really tragic moments, and I had left him in a really bad place. And so then To Kill a King happened, and in To Kill a King, they time travel. So the ancient god Cernunnos time travels them back to 200 BC in Ireland, and they rescue or they try to rescue this king who is about to be ritually murdered. And that's actually because of a bog body that I actually saw and spent time with in Ireland. Looks kind of like a suitcase, but I made him come to life. So he emerges in my book as a real person. And so when they get back from Ireland after all their adventures, they time travel back. But the ancient god Cernunnos kind of has a thing for Estrada, and he knows about all the horrible things that happened in To Render a Raven. So he brings him back a little bit earlier than when he left. So he left in September at autumn equinox, and he comes back on summer solstice, which is June 21st. And To Render a Raven happened on August the 1st. So he realizes when he comes back, he's got 6 weeks a head start on the vampire stealing his baby.
Oh,
right? I know.
Right.
Time travel is a crazy, mind-boggling
and we talked about this the last time, right? The time travel was amazing.
Yeah. So he's like, oh my gosh, I know this is going to happen. I know where they are. I know they're going to steal my kid. I know what's going to happen if I don't do anything. So he's going to be proactive in this book and try to attack the vampires and wipe them off the face of the earth before any of this happens. So that's why it's called To Dance with Destiny.
Oh,
right? Because he's going to try and change the destiny of some people that had really bad destinies in Toronto or Raven. But you know what happens with destiny and fate is when you start messing with that stuff, it gets really bad. So things don't go the way he planned. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a big piece of To Dance with Destiny. Also, he brings back with him from Iron Age Ireland this very handsome young man who is a druid bard, whose name is Connell Cool. And so there is a blooming relationship happening between Estrada and Connell, which starts in Iron Age Ireland and then sort of continues all the way through To Dance with Destiny. And fingers crossed that Estrada in book 5 finally finds someone that he can stay with.
And if I remember right, Wendy, your book covers were tattoos.
They
correct?
are tattoos, yes. Yes. So the new one has 2 wolves looking up at the moon. And I love it. I think it's my favorite one right now. It's a really sweet one. Yeah, they're all hand-drawn tattoos, feet that are on people in the book. I didn't know who was going to get this tattoo until the end, because that's my process, as I don't know anything when I start writing, and I just let it go. And so I was pleasantly surprised at not just who got the tattoo, but why and where and how it all came about and what it was going to look like.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing I remember because I loved the covers of your books. And then we had got into that when you were on season 3 is the tattoos.
Yes. Thank you.
The covers were different, right? And that's what
Yeah.
really drew me in was
Yeah.
what you can do with a book cover. And sometimes, go out of the box and bring different to the table. So you also, so for that series, Wendy, can they get it in a package? Can they get it as a deal, or like, do you have like a series package?
There are some deals out there. I think I have 1, 2, and 3 are together. I haven't put together like a whole 5-book package yet. There's probably going to be more. So I haven't I haven't ended it yet. It's just, I don't know
There
when it's
could
going
be
to
a
end.
book 6
And 7. Yeah.
and
There could,
7.
yeah, it could just keep on going. So, but I wanted to say that that my friend Yasemin Mohandesi, who actually creates these covers, she hand draws them and inks them and everything and colors them in. It's such a cool process because at the end of it, when I have a paragraph about what the tattoo looks like, I email it to her and say, "Can you draw it from this?" And then she sits down and she goes through her own creative process and she creates this tattoo for me based on what I've written with my words. And that's a favorite part for me, the whole process.
Yeah, that was one thing I remembered about. We had talked a lot about the tattoos and how the covers came about. But you also have other books out there, Wendy, that I want to talk about. I was sent the Lure. So let's talk about that one a little bit, and then we're going to jump into the new book because I want to get into the new book. I really want to get to understand already with the news.
Right. Okay. Well, Lure is actually, I can kind of segue it into the new book too. Lure is a novel that I first wrote 30 years ago. Yeah, you didn't have that part.
No, I didn't.
Okay. So at the time I was leaving my marriage and I was still in Ontario and I was just starting my degree at Trent University in Indigenous Studies. And so I was very stressed out due to all the stuff that was happening in my life. And I started meditating sometimes like 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, where I would just like lie in Shavasana on the living room rug. And I was just zoning out into these other places. And pretty soon all these characters started coming to me and I started seeing everything. And I basically wrote the first scene from Lure in that state. And so everything I'm seeing, I dreamed. I woke up in the morning and I saw the whole thing and I just sat down and typed it. So that's part of my process. And I still write like that. So, yeah, so I used that technique to write the whole book. And then I packed it up in brown paper because that's how we copyrighted things 30 years ago. And I took it with me through several moves. I still have it. I almost got rid of it the other day because I'm moving again. But I'm like, maybe I should just keep that. Anyway, I pulled it out a couple of years ago and I started rewriting it. And it's about a young woman who is it's been a while since I've talked about it. So just let me get it straight here. She's a young woman. She's grieving the loss of her fiance, and she's living up on a reserve. Okay, so she's rented a cabin on a reserve. She's a wildlife photographer and a vegetarian, and she's living up there trying to take a lot of wildlife photos because she's got a deal where she can do this, and she needs some time to grieve. And she meets this young man named Hawk, who is up there also grieving the loss of his fiance and the mother of his child, and the loss of his child. He didn't lose the child to death, but her parents swooped in and took the child. So he feels very lost, and he's living in a cave on the same reservation. It's a Chippewa reservation up north. And so she meets him, and she finds out through her friend who he is. And then she hears that the man who raised him is an old Indigenous man, is dying. And so she decides she's going to go and tell him because she wants him to have the chance to say goodbye. And so she gets on her horse and goes off into the woods by herself. So that's kind of the setup for it. But just before she leaves on her horse, she's out in the shed, and there's been a flood, and she discovers this hand, the skeletal hand that's coming up out of her shed, out of the earth. Yeah. And it turns out it is the body of a Indigenous girl who went missing 20 years ago. And yeah, so she calls in the tribal police. So while she's out with her horse out in the woods, tribal police are doing their forensic thing. And the girl started to come to me. So I had to ask her, like when I saw this myself, as I said, I don't know what's going to happen until it happens. So when I saw this hand, I said, who are you? What happened to you? And she started telling me her story. So that story weaves through the book. And so we hear her story as well. And then at the end, it all sort of comes together. It's kind of amazing how these things happen. Really.
So is this like one of your first books, Wendy?
The basic bones of it are, but then when the hand came up and everything, things kind of shifted a little bit. So in the revisions, it changed a little bit. Yeah, but it's romantic suspense. And the bones of it are, this relationship that's happening, but then there's a lot of other stuff happening too. There's other nasty characters in there. And I started creating a whole town called Lower River. That's on the edge of the Chippewa Reservation in Minnesota. And I first set it in Ontario, but then I wanted to set it in the States because there's a really nasty sheriff. And it's not.
Yeah, we don't have sheriffs in Canada.
I know. And a nasty RCMP officer is not the same at all. Okay. It's just not.
Yeah.
And basically is that because, sheriffs are elected. And so there's a lot more corruption, I think. The possibility for a lot more corruption when you're elected, than an RCMP who just gets stationed somewhere.
Yeah, that's one thing we don't have sheriffs in Canada. So when I first went to the States to see my stepdaughters, and I seen the sheriff cars, and I was like, "What? They don't have police cars? Like, what is this?" Right? It's completely different, and I think it's the same because if you're voted in, right? It's like when you're voted in, you can have more corruption. You have the power, right? People give you the power because they vote you in, and all of that, right? It's like government stuff, right? But we're not going down that road. But
No.
I think that it's nice that you can, when you're writing a story, you can do that, right? You can pick the locations, you can say,
Mhm.
you know, and sometimes you're not even in those locations and you can still put them into a story.
For sure. I mean, I had been there. I originally said it in Northern Ontario, but when I drove out from Ontario to BC, 1997, I drove through Wisconsin, Minnesota, through Sault Ste. Marie, and I just love that country. And it's the same kind of landscape as Northern Ontario. It's just on the other side of Superior, right? So yeah, so I thought, oh, that's a really nice place to set it. So that's what I did. And yeah, so that book came out. It's called Lure, and then it actually won a National Indie Excellence Award this last summer. So I was really
Oh,
proud of it. Yeah,
maybe that's why I got it, because of the award.
yeah. So I was very proud of it for that. Yeah, so that's that, and there will probably be some more Lure books. That was the idea, but I keep getting called off by my Hollystone protagonist all the time. I get sucked into his world.
So do you have like visions in that, Wendy, when you're
Mhm.
writing a story? Like
Absolutely.
you lay on the floor and then you just have these stories that come to you and then you grab a journal and just jot it down?
That is how it works. Yes, yes. And a lot of, and in terms of plotting, a lot of the time, I just will go to bed at night, and before I go to sleep, I say like, what happens next? And I can see them, and then I say, what happens? And then in the morning, I wake up, and I know what happens. And
Oh,
so
that's really
then
cool.
that's how I do it. Or I wake up in the middle of the night and just scroll it all down. And
Right? You always got to have a journal at the end of your bed. I
yeah,
know I do. Like when I get something in my thought, I wake up and I'm like, where's my pencil? And then sometimes I'll forget why I wrote those down, right? And then I just put all the words together because until I figure out why I did that. So I want to get into the new book because this new book has really gotten my attention. It's really like, whoa, that's kind of down my kind of thing. That's kind of my cup of tea, right? Is I like these kind of books. So tell us a little bit on how that came about and how long did it take you to do that book?
oh boy. Okay, so I started. It's called Writing with Your Muse: A Guide to Creative Inspiration, and it's actually a nonfiction book written for people who want to write. And I actually decided to. I've been writing it since about 2019, but I actually decided to finish it and publish it this year because I do a lot of farmers markets and sell a lot of books there, and I invariably meet people who say, I want to write a book. I'm trying to write a book. I don't know how to get the inspiration. I'm stuck, or I have ideas, but I can't get the words on the page. I don't know where to go with this. I need help. And I thought, okay, I'm going to just put this whole thing together and put it out and see if I can help people write. Because, I'm a teacher at heart, right?
Yeah.
It's still in there. I taught high school for a long time, but I'm still a teacher.
But you never let that go, right? Once a teacher, always a teacher, right? It's like a nurse. Once a nurse, always a nurse. It's in your
Yeah.
blood.
Yeah. So it came about in a very strange way. I was actually just trying to tell this story myself this afternoon, but I was doing a few things. So I was trying to research another book, which I have written, and I'm looking for a publisher for, that's set at a lighthouse. And yeah. So
She's always got my attention, this one. Like you take me down these paths of time travel
yeah,
and all of that. And my
I know.
listeners and viewers are probably like, oh, here goes Miss Liz again.
Yeah.
I love the direction where you go with your writing.
Yeah, it's about being free and open, I think. I think
Yeah.
that's huge. But in 2013, 2014, I was really stressed. I was teaching high school, and I'm an introvert, and that's just not good. So, people out there who are introverts, don't become teachers in big places. Little places, you might be okay, but don't go for these like 1,200 bodies in one place.
Yeah,
It's just
that's
not
too
good.
many.
So I was really stressed out. So I went, as I normally do, from one end of the spectrum to the other. applied to the Coast Guard, and became a relief lighthouse keeper. Right? So what they do is, when there are 27 light stations around the BC, Vancouver Island, along the BC coast, and whenever somebody goes on break, because they're there, they're very isolated, so they're stuck there. Whenever somebody goes on break, they need somebody to go in and live in their house and take over and be the lighthouse keeper. So I did that for a year, and I went to about 6 different stations. And one of those stations, I thought, okay, this has to become part of a book. So
Absolutely. Lighthouses. We don't write enough about lighthouses, and
yeah,
I love lighthouses.
yeah.
So Wendy, when you went to Scotland and Ireland, were there any lighthouses?
I didn't go to any lighthouses there, but there are definitely lighthouses there for sure. It's very much like here. Yeah.
Let's take a trip there.
Yeah.
Check out these lighthouses.
I
Right?
think they're even scarier lighthouses than what we have, like a rock with a lighthouse in the middle of waves and very scary stuff.
Right. I always am amused by the strength of a lighthouse. It stands the storms all the time, right? And it's still standing strong and bright lights.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they're amazing. I think
They
they're
are.
like inspiration, right?
Yeah.
So what is it about a lighthouse that gets your attention?
Okay, so what happened there is they're romantic, but they're also frequented by spirits. That's what happened. And so with this book, I decided I would write a story about a young woman who goes back to her childhood lighthouse home. And she has just had a trauma. Her father has died. Her mother has already died. And she hears a confession from her father that your mother didn't commit suicide. I actually pushed her off a cliff. Please go back to the lighthouse and read her journals so you understand and forgive me. So that's the premise for it.
Ooh.
But the trauma, the trauma.
I want this book.
Not out yet. We need a publisher. So the trauma actually sets off her ability to see spirits in a really big way. Like, she sees them with her eyes, and she can't tell who's a spirit and who's not. It's like a real heavy duty one. So she's basically a medium, a clairvoyant medium. And I didn't know much about being a clairvoyant medium. So I went and read some mediumship books, and then across my computer screen came this class happening really close to where I lived in, I guess I was in Coquitlam then, which is Lower Mainland in BC. So I got a hold of the teacher and asked, and I went to this. And anyway, long story short, a whole lot of crazy things started happening while we were all doing this mediumship course together. One of them is I met the lovely lady that that draws my tattoos. She was there.
See, there was a reason for it.
Always.
We said it the last time, right? We meet people for a reason. We get connected, and then we're like, well, why do I need to know this person? And then, ding, ding, the light goes off, right? Like the lighthouse, and it finds your way home, right?
Yeah. And sort of through all of this, I was again meditating for long periods of time, and I started to really connect with all kinds of spirits, uncles and all sorts of spirits. And it became apparent when my grade 8 English teacher showed up, Mr. Sellers, that I needed to write this book. And so I ended up one afternoon, I just had my laptop sitting on the counter. I was in a really meditative state, and I just started wandering around, and I was coming back and typing, and then walking away, pacing, coming back, typing. And at the end of it, I had written basically the plan for several workshops on how to write. And I basically did the workshops, and I had a number of women come, and we did a whole series of how to write with your muse. And I took all of that and turned it into this book.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So it's a workshopped book that did work for people. We would go into the room, and we were all gathered around with our journals and everything. I would lead a meditation, and then we would just write for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, and then we would share what we had written. And everybody was blown away by what they had written. It was crazy.
So Wendy, what is a muse?
Well, it depends how you think of a muse. I mean, I think there are many muses. So I don't think there's just one muse. And it's changed, of course, over history. But the idea that there can be muses that are inside and muses that are outside. So inside, I would say, like, there is maybe the voice from your subconscious. Some people say it's the voice of God that they're speaking to, or source, or however you think of it in that way. But I also think there are outside forces, such as spirit guides, angels, all of those kinds of beings. Characters can be your muse. Okay, that's why I can't stop Estrada. He's like my muse. He keeps coming and saying, hang on, now we're going to write this. I also think that they can be live people. They can be other writers that you read. You know, the old poets in literature, they always wrote to each other in poetry. Like I would write a poem and you would write a poem back, kind of a thing. And we would have...
You should bring that back, right?
We would have this conversation in our poetry. So there's that. And then Peter Gabriel is one of my bigger muses. So I'm fascinated by his lyrics and his beautiful voice. And so he became the muse for Connell Cool, and who is my druid bard. So when Connell sings, I hear Peter Gabriel's voice.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of...
Yeah, and that's a nice voice.
Isn't it? I mean,
my goodness.
Goosebumps voice. It really is. He's amazing. So,
well, it's amazing what words can do, right? We talked about this the last time, is the lyrics in music, lyrics in a story, you know, how they fall together. And poetry, we need to bring that back. There's not enough poetry out there, you know.
yeah.
There's a lot of freestyling and a lot of keynoting and note keeping, but there's no flow. Like the flow is missing. We need to bring the flow back.
Yeah. I mean, there are some beautiful... Mary Oliver comes to mind as somebody who I've heard I've heard her poems that are really beautiful. So yeah, there are some poets, but the idea of conversing with each other through your poetry, I think is an interesting way to do it.
Anymore, right? We gotta start bringing that flow back in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just in this book, I have a big piece on it on my website, so you can sort of see all the different chapters. But some of my favorite pieces that are in there are, I have things on how to get an artifact box. So collect a whole bunch of different things like feathers, stones, teacups. For you.
Oh.
You have a bunch of stuff right there on your wall.
This room is starting to get really full, and with family, you know, carrying on, then they're always like, do you want to have this? Do you want to have that? And of course, I'm a sucker. I can't say no, because it's the history for me. The story of who drank from it, who served from it, how many people were at the table when you actually put the water in that pot. You know, that's what always gets me with tea, is the stories behind it. Like, who created the teacup? Who created the teapot? Like, who designed it, right? Because there's a story behind that as well. And yeah, I think it's really nice that we can use the history and bring it to the future, right? And bring it into the present right now. Yeah. So this book, you're going to be doing workshops with it, correct?
I am. And I was just on StreamYard this afternoon trying to practice, because what I'd like to do is like offer a meditation. So people get together, they have their journal, they have their pen there, and we do what we did in the workshops. So I lead us through a guided visualization, and then we take the time to write. So that's on my agenda, but I'm still practicing. So don't ask me to do one right now, because I knew you were going to do that. Could you do one for us?
It would have been nice. We could have done one.
Yeah.
But Wendy, let's get into your tea. So I asked you, this year I'm doing it different, guys. I'm asking my guests their tea ahead of time so that they have time to process it. and we're making strong teas. And you gave me Through Endless Adventures. So you want to tell me what that stands for?
Well, I mean, I love adventure. I mean, I'm an introvert who loves adventure. I don't know how that comes out, but in a way, I'm a risk taker, and I really feel like when we go on these adventures, we learn. You know, we're always learning something new, and so that's how I learn, is through endless adventure. You know, try it on, see if it fits. Try something new, do something else. Yeah, and that's kind of how I roll. So
I like the word endless, because you know
endless,
it never ends, right?
like the Hollystone Mysteries.
The Hollystone collection. It's never going to end. 6, 7, 8's coming.
We'll see.
When you're writing those Hollystone collection books, Wendy, do you think that there's going to be another book when you're done that book? Like when you were done book 1, did you think there was going to be a book 2?
Let me think. Book 1. Maybe not at the end of book 1. I'm trying to think if there was a cliffhanger there. But once I got onto it, I certainly got to the point where just at the very end, like each one is a story in itself that ends, but there's also that little doot doot that, you know, oh, we're going to pop into the next one. So with this one, the last one, 5, I didn't leave a huge cliffhanger.
Oh,
But
there's a cliffhanger.
I also think that we could go in so many directions now, because, you know, it's
I like when you do that, Wendy, because then it leaves it open for a lot of different opportunities, right?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, it's a Wicca coven. So there's a number of key characters that have been through the whole series with me. And I mean, somebody else could pop up, you know, and have an adventure. So that's kind of what could happen. But because I'm writing another book now, so I've got the Lighthouse book I'm trying to publish. It's pretty much done. And then I'm writing this other book that's based on rum runners in 1924 Southern BC.
Oh,
yeah. See, I sort of go all over the place, but if I see something that grabs me, I just go with it.
So what's that one going to be about?
This one, it's jumps off a real murder that happened. Oh. Yeah, a real murder that happened in September 1924. So it's 100 years coming up this year.
Oh, that makes a good story.
Yeah, and it was a fella and his son that had picked up a load of 350 cases of booze, because we had prohibition in the States, but not in British Columbia. So they would take it out to the line, the line, and then the guys would scoop up from the States and unload all those cases and take it back to the thirsty Americans. But it also became a land of pirates.
Ooh, we got pirates now.
Yeah, because of course, unscrupulous people are out there going, hey, there's a funny looking old boat over there just sitting outside a bay. I wonder if it's full of booze. And then they would come and attack them. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this fella and his son were murdered. And so what I did is I kind of spun off that, and I made them be part of the life of another family who lived in Southern BC. And they are going through the same kind of thing, where the father is wanting to get a load of rum across the border, make some quick cash, and his daughter's trying to keep him from going. Oh. Right? She's trying to save him from this kind of unscrupulous flapper woman who has, come in and dug her claws into daddy.
So are you releasing that book this year?
I'm trying to write that book this year. And honestly, it's so busy. I keep being like, because to do my process, I have to have chunks of downtime. So I really would like to finish it yes, I would like to. I mean, I'd love to have it out by September, but
that'd be cool.
Times are clicking here, right?
I know, right? We're almost going into February. I'm like, where did January go? Like it just seems like you blink your eyes and another year is done.
Yeah.
it's crazy how fast it goes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I'm actually halfway through Act 2, which is pretty good. So if I can get some quality time in here, yeah, I might be able to do it. We'll see.
So Wendy, you said that you're going to be doing these workshops. So when will these workshops be taking place?
That's a good question.
Well, you were practicing today.
I'm practicing. I know I'm practicing. Keep an eye on my Facebook page, because I will announce it on Facebook and Instagram. And then I think I'll do it as a Facebook Live so people can drop in and try it out and see how they go. But I do a lot of, as a recipient, I do a lot of guided visualizations. You know, every I'll do a little pitch for this right here, because I'm into Druidry. I love Druidry. And every Monday, 8 p.m. in the UK, noon Pacific time. So wherever you are, I'm not sure. I guess it would be 3. I think we're 3 hours, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it'd be 3 for you. I join Tea with a Druid, which is a little, it's not little anymore, but it's a group of Druids from all over the world. And often there's 300 or 400 of us. And we just listen, and we get this to the Facebook Live with Philip Cargum. And he actually was the Grand Chief of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids for about 30 years. He just gave it. Yeah. And he's a psychotherapist, and he's a remarkably incredible man with a lovely voice. And he does guided meditations in the Druid Grove. So I really look forward to that on Mondays at noon, just joining up with that group. And you can actually feel the energy of everybody. It's amazing what you like through the technology and everything. Yeah. So I do a lot of that stuff. And when I wake up at night, and I'm an insomniac, so when I wake up and I can't sleep, I throw on my phones and I do either binaural beats, or I do some kind of visualization, and then I go back to sleep and I dream. So it works really well.
I don't know if that's something that all writers go through, insomnia.
Maybe.
I'd be really curious about that, because I do a lot of my writing at nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
During the day, my it's too busy. I can't get the words to come out. But at nighttime, I could just write and write and write.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I just write and I don't understand why I'm writing, but I'm just writing. And a lot of writers that I've met over the last couple of years, they're all writing at nighttime. Like they're all journaling at nighttime. So
you want me to tell you why?
Sure, go ahead. Tell me.
Because we're into it, because that's when we have a shift in consciousness. And so what I explain in Writing with Your Muse is that it's all about brainwaves. So we have 4 different types of brainwaves, and the fastest brainwaves are beta waves, and they are really rapid, and that's what we're using right now. And when we're doing all our normal sort of daily work, and there's no room for writing when you're there. It doesn't happen. If you can slow it down a little bit and get into alpha waves, you can sometimes get into daydreaming a little bit and doing editing and revising and things like that. But the real beauty one that you want to get to is theta waves. And that is happening in that time, in the liminal zone at twilight and dawn, and when you're in a really deep meditative state. And so when you're doing these guided meditations, that's where you're going, into an alpha theta state. And so that's why all of your inspiration's coming, because you're in a different state of brain. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You see, always learn something new on Tea Time. All the listeners out there, you're learning about the waves. Yeah. I've heard of the beta waves and the alpha waves. I haven't heard of the other ones.
Well, they're the ones you want. And of course, delta is deep sleep and dreaming, right? Or no, dreamless sleep. It's actually when you're like completely out of it. Right?
Well, No,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that, Wendy. Like
Yeah.
like I learn from my guests as well. When you guys come here and sit and talk with me, as I pick up things too, and I understand that the listeners out there are, sometimes, Miss Liz, can you ask that question? Because I don't understand where we're going with this, you know?
Mhm.
And it's okay because that's what we're here for. We're here to learn, right? We're here to teach. And
Mhm.
that, and you're a teacher, you're a heart of teacher. So we're teaching tonight. I
Mhm.
want to get into beliefs and fears because that's also part of the new book.
Mhm.
So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Like I think that we all, especially people who want to write, we have a lot of fears around it, and I think those things can really kind of gag you. And I mean that because your voice, your creative voice is here, and I mean gag you, like so that you can't write. It can stop you from writing. So one of the things I have people do right at the beginning of this book is to get into that alpha state and to open their journal and write down every fear that they can that comes to them. I don't want to say think because I don't want people to think. Thinking is not good. We don't want to think when we're writing. We just want to,
Well, it slows the process down when we're
yeah,
thinking.
yes. We want to just let it happen. And so write down all of those fears. And then what I do is I list them all in another place. And then I go through and I take each of those fear and I give an antidote for fear. So I give some reasons that can help you get through it.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I
For
like that.
me, like, for example, I can use me as an example. One of my biggest fears is because I'm such an introvert. Like, if I get really successful, am I going to have to leave my house and go on a tour and actually get up and talk to like large crowds of people? Um, that can be really hobbling for an introvert. We were like, no, we don't want to do that. We just want to put our book up on Amazon and go back and get into bed, right?
Yeah.
And hope that it sells. And I think and of course, that probably won't because people are wanting to buy from people that they know or that they've seen speak or they've met or whatever. So
Well, even doing interviews like this, Wendy, it can be challenging for an introvert,
absolutely, because
because
it's still social, right?
and it's hard to talk about our work, right? Sometimes because we're just like, oh, well, maybe they might hear this and then they'll want me to do this and then want me to do that. And then,
Yeah.
all these wheels start thinking, right? And they start moving and you're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even say anything about that, right? So,
I know, right? And that is very true. That's what happens is if you say something, people might go, okay, well, you're on. Like me saying to you, no, I'm doing these meditations. Next thing I knew you were going to say is, oh, can you lead one?
you knew I was going to say it. She's like, I'm not doing it tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
You put the
So,
brakes on me right away. You're like, no, not happening.
yeah, yeah. So
But that's what I mean.
it's
Like,
funny.
we open that door and then things just flow, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I'm like that as well, where I'm just like, I don't want to share too much because then this person knocks and then this person, and then they're like, Mrs., can you do this? And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, just do that. Like, it's like putting the book on Amazon, right? It's there. If you
Yeah,
want it, go get it, and that. But
yeah,
it can be a scary process, right? Especially when you're
absolutely.
an introvert and you like to be alone, right? And we like our
Mhm,
quiet time, and then everybody's like, but I want you, I want you, I want to talk to you, I want to. It gets
mhm.
a lot, and it can be draining at times. We talked about this the last time when you were on the show, Wendy, and it was being drained out, right, from the different energies of pulling us
Absolutely.
in all different directions, right?
Yeah.
So how have you worked on that since the last time?
I think I'm a lot more confident, and I think that you get more confident just by practicing, right? Like coming on these shows and
Yeah.
talking. Um, I don't stumble as much now. I'm not, afraid to say anything now. It's like, you really have to. And I know a lot of friends of mine who will rehearse what they're going to say before they go on a show, or they have notes. And I mean, these are all really viable things to, if you want to make sure you cover certain topics, you have some notes there. So you're
Yeah.
not just winging it like I'm doing right now. Um, but, but
Well, it's always wing it with Miss Liz.
yeah, but
It's because I like
you
wings,
can.
guys, so I just wing everything.
Right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, another big fear is judgment. you know, especially like my books are super sexy. Okay. And especially the last one, my goodness, I was like, are you kidding me? Can we move on? Let's move on. But no, they're very sexy books. And so when I first started writing them and I was teaching high school, I was really worried about being judged then. And now I'm not so worried about it because I'm older. You know, that's what happens. A lovely thing about getting older is you kind of like don't care anymore.
Right? Yeah.
It's like,
As you get
whatever.
older, it's just like, that doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah, I own it
Where-
now, you know, I own it. And so I do the best job that I can when I'm putting words to what I see. And but I mean, certainly being judged about your writing is a huge concern for people. You know, my mother read my diary when I was a teenager. Oh yeah. You know, the little red one with the little key and the little gold lock and everything.
I have one like that, a little brown guy somewhere.
Yeah. And I came home and I was like 14, 15, and I was just pretty much the same person, you know. So whether I was doing things or just imagining and writing them, I was writing it all down there. And I came home and she was like horrified, and my father, and it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, despite the fact she'd gone in my room and taken my property and unlocked it and read it. I mean, you know, but anyway, when I finally got it back, I went up to the neighbor's place and hid in the bushes because I love nature, and with my matches, and I burned every page. Kind of a ritual. And I didn't keep it.
This ever again.
I know. And that made me afraid to write for a long time. And I think that happens to people too. You know,
Well, it's an invasion of privacy as well, right?
Yeah. So
when I got my first one with the little key, I was like, oh, nobody can ever read what I'm writing in here. I could put whatever I feel. And then it was always like somebody, they knew you had a journal and they had to find the thing, right? They had to get in there. Like, what is she talking about? What's he talking about?
I know.
You know, it's like, oh.
Journals are fascinating. They really are.
Yeah. So how old were you when you got your first one?
I think I was about 13 or 14 then when that happened.
So that was your first one.
Yeah. I didn't actually get back to journaling again till I was in Indigenous studies, and I was in a really safe space, so I could write to my teacher, who I'm still friends with now, and I could tell him all this stuff that had happened when I was, you know, all the like #MeToo stuff that went on when I was a teenager, because I was an at-risk kid, and I was able to do that and get healing out of it because I knew it wouldn't go anywhere. And he didn't judge me, and I think that that's really important, because that fear of judgment is huge.
It is.
You know, if you think I'm going to write this story, somebody might read it, they're going to think differently of me. It's going to stop you, and you don't want anything to stop you.
So have you bought yourself a journal as an adult?
I journal, but I don't journal anything that's personal anymore. Very much.
They did it once to me, never again.
Yeah. I have tons of them. I have a whole box of journals throughout my life.
So you have some without the key.
Lots without the key, and lots that probably need to be on the bonfire. Yes, including the one I wrote during my Indigenous studies, which I still have. And
well, you're keeping it for a reason. Maybe make a story out of it one day.
Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe. Right? So what has writing taught you, Wendy? Because you write in a different genre, right? You write in the urban fantasy. So what has it taught you about yourself?
That's a really good question. What has it taught me about myself? I think that I have a huge imagination, for one thing, that I can connect with these characters. I love urban fantasy because it's so freeing, and one thing I need is freedom. That's more important to me than pretty much anything. I need the ability to be free. And when I hear of people that aren't free, that just is like, oh, you know, people that are imprisoned or in abusive relationships, they can't get out of them, all that kind of stuff. It's just really hard because, we all deserve to be free and to be able to do what we want to do and find our passion and do what our passion is, give ourselves joy through that passion. I think it's really important. So, yeah.
I think so too, right? Just the word freedom, it's a strong word. You need to, do that poetry, converse to freedom, right? Start using words and expressing. So if anybody would like to reach you, Wendy, or get any of your books, where can they go and get that?
The best place to go is my website, which I see you have up here, bluehavenpress.com. And there you can find out all about my books. There's my store is on there, my bio, my media stuff, like everything is there. So that's kind of my home. And it's Blue Haven because blue is my place.
Well, your favorite color is cobalt blue, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you want to remind me again about the cobalt blue, what it stands for?
I just love cobalt blue. It's like, the blue glass bottles and everything you see. Like if I'm
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
If I'm walking through a store and I see those, I'm just like, I'm gone,
Squirrel.
Yeah. And I especially like those in the wintertime. I tend to like turquoise in the summer. Yeah. So, but I shift, but it's always blue for me. And yeah.
So it's almost like the sea glass.
Yes. Yes. That would be nice.
Because the turquoise and then the blues and the lighting flows, right?
Yeah. I mean, looking out the window, I could do with a little bit of turquoise lagoon right now, I'll tell you.
Oh, I know. There's too much white outside.
Right? Yeah. A little white sand, little turquoise water over top. That would be nice.
So, Wendy, any plans for the future besides the books that you share tonight and workshops? Any other plans for you?
Other than I'm planning to move again. No, I think I have enough on my plate right now. So, yeah.
Well, I've seen a big difference from season 3 to season 5, like just the conversation, right? Because when we first met the first time, we were kind of like, we're just getting to know each other, right? Mm-hmm. Now we know each other and the ice is broken, so we can have that free flowing conversation. And I really enjoy having my guests back because then it gives me an extra chance to get a little deeper, right? And get to know you guys a little bit more. And I appreciate you coming back, Wendy. It's an honor to have you back. And I can't wait for the workshop. So we'll be sure to check that out. Check out the websites and keep your eye open on our Facebook page. And check out those reviews because, I mean, like you've had some really incredible ones. Is there one that really stands out to you, Wendy?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, I don't know. They're all great. They're all great. And I had, a lot of them are by authors, but, it's, I don't know. It's just great to see that. I mean, whenever you say like, okay, here's a review, it's like, okay, what's going to happen? You don't know. But so far they have been really good. So
right. You hear that word review thankful. And you're like, ooh, what's coming? Like,
yeah, I'm very thankful because it's different than what I normally write, right? It's like I'm a fiction writer, but coming out with nonfiction, I thought, will people even want to review this because it's nonfiction? But no, apparently it's great. I will say there is a lot of my fiction in this book because a big piece of it is I'll give an example of how I use it. So I sort of explain it, how it works, I teach it, and then I give examples, which is, of course, the teacher's credo, right? Is I do, we do, you do. And that's kind of how I work it. So,
yeah. Well, I think we all need a little bit of teaching help, It's like when I asked for the tea and people are like, what is she looking for? Like, is she looking for words? What a story? Like, and it's just a metaphor of who we are, the stories of who we are, right? That we all bring different flavors to the table. And tonight you brought a really incredible tea to the table. You brought some through endless adventure. And I think those 3 words are magical, right? When it comes to your books as well, because you actually take people through an endless adventure with all of your books. So thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. I want to thank all the viewers and listeners for tuning in to Tea Time. We are going to wrap up January next Thursday with 2 new guests. next Thursday, we do have a triggering event that is coming, triggering speaker coming. She'll be talking about sex trafficking. She is a mother of a daughter who was sex trafficked. And then we're going to wrap it up with Doug Lawrence. And Doug Lawrence has been on Miss Liz's radio show, but he hasn't been on Miss Liz's Tea Time show. So we're going to do a little different with Doug next time. So it's going to be a little different, and tune in for that. And if you'd like to know more about Miss Liz's Tea Times, you can check out my website at www.misslizsteatimes.com. And I am truly blessed and honored, Wendy, to have you here. I'm sure I will see you again for a third tea time, a fourth tea time. This is just the beginning. So thank you again, Wendy, for trusting me with your story and your books. And
big thank yous to you for inviting me. I always enjoy being here.
Well, thank you so much. So I will see everybody same place, same time next Thursday with 2 new TEAs, and we'll make a difference with cup of tea.